Reading from the beginning of the book of Genesis. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless wasteland, and darkness covered the abyss, while a mighty wind swept over the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw how good the light was. God then separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Thus evening came, and morning followed, the first day. Then God said, "Let there be a dome in the middle of the waters, to separate one body of water from the other." And so it happened. God made the dome, and it separated the water above the dome from the water below it. God called the dome the sky. Evening came, and morning followed, the second day. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered into a single basin, so that the dry land may appear." And so it happened. The water under the sky was gathered into its basin, and the dry land appeared. God called the dry land the earth. And the basin of the water he called the sea. God saw how good it was. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seed in it." And so it happened. The earth brought forth every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seed in it. God saw how good it was. Evening came, and morning followed, the third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky, to separate day from night. Let them mark the fixed times, the days and the years, and serve as luminaries in the dome of the sky, to shed light upon the earth." And so it happened. God made the two great lights, the greater one to govern the day, and the lesser one to govern the night. He made the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky, to shed light upon the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw how good it was. Evening came, and morning followed, the fourth day. Verbum Domini. May the Lord be glad in his works. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are great indeed. You are clothed with majesty and glory, robed in light as with a cloak. May the Lord be glad in his works. You fixed the earth upon its foundation, not to be moved forever. With the ocean as with a garment, you covered it. Above the mountains, the waters stood. May the Lord be glad in his works. You send forth springs into the water courses that wind among the mountains. Beside them, the birds of heaven dwell. From among the branches, they send forth their song. May the Lord be glad in his works. How manifold are your works, O Lord! In wisdom you have wrought them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Alleluia. May the Lord be glad in his works.
Alleluia. 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 Jesus preached the gospel of the kingdom and cured every disease among the people. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
Dominus vobiscum,
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Marcum.
Gloria tibi, Domine.
After making the crossing to the other side of the sea, Jesus and his disciples came to the land of Gennesaret and tied up there. As they were leaving the boat, people immediately recognized him. They scurried about the surrounding country and began to bring in the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. Whatever villages or towns or countryside he entered, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged that they might touch only the tassel of his cloak. And as many as touched it were healed. Verbum Domini.
Laus tibi, Christe.
Pope Francis' intention for the month of February is for women who are victims of abuse. Throughout the world, millions of women are victims of psychological violence, verbal violence, physical violence, sexual violence. He says these abuses are acts of cowardice and a degradation of all humanity. The Pope asks that the Church pray for the victims, that they may be protected by society and have their sufferings considered and heeded by all. According to statistics, each day throughout the world, 137 women are killed by members of their own family. Adult women make up nearly half of the victims of human trafficking identified worldwide. And globally, 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual violence at some point in their life. Those numbers are staggering. But all statistics and numbers set aside, there are real women being abused. One abused is too many. If you're watching or listening and you are a woman who is being abused in any way or has been abused in the past, that is suffering from the scars of the past, we are praying for you. Encourage you to reach out for help. There is help. You do not have to suffer this agony alone. Reach out to a crisis hotline. Catholic Charities in your local community or even your home parish church should have resources that can guide you, to help protect you, and lead you in the right direction for hope and healing. There are people that will listen to you. Be not afraid. The saint that we honor today, St. Josephine Bakhita, is the model of this type of situation, a model of the truest sense of what it means to be emancipated, Christian emancipation. In other words, Christian deliverance, Christian liberation. She experienced in her own life many horrible crimes of injustice. But in the face of such wickedness, where one might be tempted to lose all hope, she gives us a model of perseverance, a model of Christian hope. St. Josephine Bakhita was born in a small village in Darfur, the region of Sudan. She was born to a very wealthy family. Her uncle was a tribal chief, and she recalls being very happy as a child and not experiencing any suffering until her life would radically change at the age of 7. The exact date of her birth is not known due to her tragic kidnapping. So traumatic the experience, she did not even remember her name that she was given by her parents. Her kidnappers named her Bakhita, which means fortunate in Arabic. Historians that have studied her life say that around 1877, she was kidnapped by Arab slave traders and then forced to walk about 600 miles to the slave market. In miles, that's about from Birmingham to Columbus, Ohio, in length. 600 miles. For the next 12 years of her life, she was bought and sold and given away in very different ways, different times. The amount of abuse that she endured was horrendous. She was tortured by various slave owners that beat her, cut her, and branded her even during her teenage years. She knew nothing about Christianity at this time. She told the story of later how one of her, quote, masters, a slave owner and Turkish general, gave her to his wife and mother-in-law, who would beat her daily. She said that as soon as one wound would heal, they would inflict another wound. Josephine remembered that the general's wife ordered her to be scarred. They drew patterns on her skin with flour and then cut into her flesh with a blade. Then the salt was rubbed on her wounds to make them permanent. During this time, she suffered 144 scars. It's very difficult to hear, very difficult to comprehend this type of violence. Very often people experience this type of violence and don't have scars. Their scars are more internal. Scars on the heart, wounds of the heart, that no one sees on the outside, but they suffer in silence. In 1882, she was bought by an Italian merchant for the Italian consul Callisto Legnani, who later would give her to a friend of the family, Augusto Micheli, who brought her to Italy as a nanny to his daughter. And it was in these Italian families where she experienced true dignity, and she was never mistreated. It was through this family that she discovered Christ crucified, through a small crucifix given to her as a gift. She explained that looking at that crucifix, she experienced something she cannot explain. She would say that this was her first introduction to Jesus Christ, the good master. A master that would free her, master that would not beat her. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI wrote of this in his encyclical Spe Salvi on Christian hope. I encourage you to read this encyclical. You can download it online for free. You don't have to buy the book. It's a very worthwhile read, Spe Salvi, on Christian hope. Hope saves. He says, here, after the terrifying, quote, masters who have owned her up to that point, Bakhita came to know a totally different kind of master. In Venetian dialect, she saw now that she was learning the name Paron, P-A-R-O-N, Paron, for the living God, the God of Jesus Christ. Up to that time, she had known only masters who despised and maltreated her, or at best consider her a useful slave. Now, however, she heard that there was a Paron above all masters, the Lord of all lords, and that this Lord is goodness in person. She came to know that this Lord even knew her, and that he created her, that he actually loved her. She too was loved, and that none other than by the supreme Paron, capital P, P-A-R-O-N, Paron, before whom all masters are themselves no more than lowly servants, Jesus Christ. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI says, she was known and loved, and she was awaited. What is more, this master had himself accepted the destiny of being flogged, and now is waiting for her at the Father's right hand. She saw in Jesus crucified that she was not alone, that her master, the master above all masters, took upon himself in his body and in his own flesh the destiny of being flogged. She saw in Jesus hope, hope of liberation. The Pope says, Pope Emeritus says, now she had hope, no longer simply the modest hope of finding masters who would be less cruel. Very often this was the mentality in slavery of slaves, hoping that they would find a master, a slave owner that would be less cruel to them. That was a false hope. But now she found the real hope. Real Christian hope. True liberation. She found the great hope. And she says, I am definitely loved. And whatever happens to me, I am awaited by this love. And so my life is good. Through the knowledge of this hope, the Pope says, she was redeemed, no longer a slave, but a child of God. On the occasion of her canonization, Pope St. John Paul II said that she came to understand the profound truth that God and not man is the true master of every human life. God is the master of all life. Not man, not any country, not any state. God. God is the master of all human life. The Pope says, St. John Paul II, this experience became the source of great wisdom for this humble daughter of Africa, In today's world, countless women continue to be victimized, the Pope says in his homily at her canonization, even in developed modern societies. St. Josephine Bakhita, in her life, we find a shining example of emancipation, Christian liberation, hope, the kind of hope that we all yearn for and long for. The history of her life inspires not passive acceptance, but the firm resolve to work effectively to free girls and women from oppression and violence, and to return them to their dignity in their full exercise of their rights as a child of God. St. Josephine Bakhita is the first saint of Sudan and now the patron saint of all those suffering from human trafficking in the world today. She is a woman who now intercedes for all abused women. Again, you are not alone. You have an advocate if you are suffering out there. You have somebody who knows you, who knows your pain, not just the Lord himself, obviously, who was flogged, beaten, but you have a woman who experienced this for years, experienced the reality of freedom, not just of being freed from slavery, but experiencing in her own heart liberation, hope, freedom. Only a woman transformed by grace could utter these words of St. Josephine Bakhita that I'll close with. If I were to meet the slave traders who kidnapped me, and even those who tortured me, I would kneel and kiss their hands. For if that did not happen, I would not be a Christian or religious today. The Lord has loved me so much, we must love everyone. We must be compassionate. She shows us the truest sense of compassion. Jesus taught her this, him crucified and risen from the dead. And he himself keeps his scars, his wounds on his body for all eternity.